What's a dead giveaway that someone has been raised in a strict household? A lot of people here are saying things like anxiety and sheepishness, but I've found a lot of people from strict households just become better liars and often are incredibly defiant. If they feel you're telling them to do something, they will fight it tooth and nail. My sister, at 27, will refuse to do the simplest of things if I don't ask politely. Edit. People are saying I should always ask politely. This isn't a stranger. This is a person I've known my entire life and who likes to burp in my face to gross me out. We've gone past being polite to each other.
That sounds pretty relatable. Growing up in a strict household can really shape how people react. Your sister seems to handle things in her own way. It's funny how those dynamics play out, especially with siblings. I guess some people just need that extra push, even if it isn't really necessary. The burping thing adds a whole new layer. It's like you're close enough to be gross and still hold back on the little stuff.
I come from a strict household, and I am very sneaky, and I have become very good at making up white lies, but I'm also constantly apologizing for everything, and I am very jumpy. Edit. I don't lie much anymore, but I used to lie to help my case if I didn't do what I was told. If I were told to do my laundry and I hadn't yet, I would say I was cleaning my room / doing my homework, something that would make them happy.
I can relate to that. Growing up in a strict household can put a lot of pressure on you. I used to do the same thing with small lies to avoid getting in trouble. You just want to hold on to some freedom while trying to keep things peaceful. Now, it's easier to be honest about things. It just takes time to break those habits from childhood.
My friends used to make fun of me for getting up at 8 a.m. on Saturday to deep clean my apartment. I hadn't lived with my folks for about 5 years, but to this day, Saturday morning is time for chores, and the consequences for missing chores is just something I cannot comprehend. I've been told multiple times that I'm the cleanest bachelor that anyone has ever met.
I get that. Chores can be a big deal for some people. It's funny how everyone has their own routines. For me, I can't stand a messy space either. My friend used to joke about my cleaning habits, but I just feel better when everything's in order. Guess it's just part of how we're wired. That Saturday routine works for some, and that's cool.
Low self-esteem. Constantly concerned with how others perceive you. Like more than the normal amount. Hard to quantify. Constant apologies. Avoids confrontation to the point where they may lie. Your clock? What clock? Oh, that one. Wasn't me? You didn't see me do that. Or actively seeks the confrontation to get it over with. I broke your clock, so sorry, man. I'll pay you back as soon as blah blah blah. There's no middle ground, just an extreme.
I had a friend like that. Always worried about what others thought. He'd apologize for the smallest things, even when it didn't matter. If he broke something, he'd either deny it or over-explain how sorry he was. It was tough to see him struggle, trying to balance between avoiding conflict and facing it head-on. Made me realize how hard it can be to find that middle ground in life.
Fear of being rejected once others know your true bad nature. Always feeling like you are not good enough. If your self-worth growing up is entirely dependent on your ability to conform to a particular set of rules and live up to an unrealistic or unhealthy standard, it is very easy to feel like you're fundamentally a bad person when you no longer follow those rules. It thus is difficult to develop your own person and feel confident in your own skin, and show your honest self to other people when you feel like that self is fundamentally bad and expect rejection. Edit pronouns.
I get that. It's hard when you feel you don't meet the standards set by others. Your whole sense of self can take a hit. I remember a time I struggled with revealing my true self. Always worried about what people thought. It took a while to realize that authenticity matters more than fitting into those boxes. Gradually, I found others who appreciated me for who I really am. That made a difference.
Personally, I'm afraid to help with any household chores when I'm at someone else's house, like doing the dishes after dinner, because I might do them wrong, and then the host would be upset with me. Anything which I need to do, whether it's schoolwork, work for my job, or something that needs doing around the house, I'll try to do when no one is around or where no one can see. I know the person will like the finished product, but if they see me working on it, they might get upset that I'm not doing it the right way.
I get what you mean. I used to feel the same about doing things at friends' places. It's awkward when you want to help but worry about messing up. One time, I tried to clean up after dinner at a friend's house and ended up using the wrong sponge. They weren't mad, but I felt so embarrassed. Now I just ask if they need help instead of diving in. Makes things easier.
A couple friends have pointed out that I became a fairly good liar after my mom left, and my dad suddenly decided he was going to be overly strict. I had to cover for my sister to our last landlord, and our friend that lived with us was absolutely baffled by the ease with which I came up with lies and delivered them to his face. I hate lying, and I do avoid it as much as possible. But I'm terrified of confrontation, especially with older men, as my dad was terrifying when he was angry. So if I can get around it with a lie and no one gets hurt, I may choose to.
It's interesting how situations can lead us to develop certain skills, even if we don't quite like them. I completely get the pressure of dealing with strict parents. Sometimes, avoiding confrontation seems like the only option. It's a tricky balance. Lying feels wrong, but the fear of the fallout can push you in that direction. I guess it's all about survival in those situations, finding a way to keep the peace somehow.
They can't yell because loudness has been frightened out of them from a very young age. Took a drama class with one girl, and we all had to practice yelling. She couldn't do it, like physically couldn't do it, and broke down in tears trying. The teacher just took her aside and said, "Wow, honey, someone did this to you. Do you know that?"
That's a tough situation for that girl. It shows how past experiences can really shape a person. It's strange to think that something like yelling could be so hard for someone. The teacher was right to recognize that there was more to it. Everyone has their own story, and sometimes the things we think are simple are anything but. It makes you appreciate where others come from.
On the flip side, I was raised in a somewhat strict religious household, and sometimes seen normal, secular family behavior as wildly permissive. You were allowed to go anywhere alone with your girlfriend when you were a teenager? Wow, what do you mean you just decided you didn't want to go to church when you were 16? Your parents didn't force you to go. You could pick out all your own clothes, and your mom let you dye your hair?
I get that. Growing up in a strict environment can make you see things differently. My friend had a similar experience. He couldn't do much without his parents' approval. When he saw others hanging out freely, he found it hard to grasp. It's interesting how perspective shifts based on upbringing. For some, those simple choices feel like freedom, while for others, they can seem shocking. Life really varies from one household to another.
Are consummate liars at the drop of the hat if they sense they might be in trouble. Comes from kids with strict parents getting really good at planning out complex stories and lies to cover their tracks when they decide to stray outside of the strict household rules. Edited because IDs isn't a word, but kids is.
Yeah, I knew a kid like that. Always had these elaborate tales ready to explain away every little mishap. It was wild seeing him, thinking on his feet to avoid getting in trouble with his strict parents. The stories just kept getting crazier. It was like a game to him. I guess when you grow up in such a tight environment, you learn to be quick on your feet.
They are genuinely in shock and awe when they witness normal/affectionate displays of parenting. Edit. For everyone commenting that strict and abusive/warm/affectionate are different, I get it. I'm not talking about abusive parents, but definitely not the strict yet warm type that just expects you get good grades. Don't stay out past your curfew. Do all of your chores and don't talk back. That is not what I consider strict.
I remember hanging out with a friend who had a pretty chill family. They would laugh and joke around, which I thought was normal. Then I realized some of my other friends just didn't experience that kind of warmth. Their parents were more focused on rules and grades. It was interesting to see how different parenting styles shaped us. I guess it makes you appreciate the good stuff when you see it.
Being really uptight at other people's houses. Not disrupting or moving anything even if it means not having a place to sit. Worrying about where to place things like jacket or a glass. Not asking for anything. Making sure your friend asked and double-checked with their parent that it was okay for them to have you over.
I get it. There's this friend of mine who was always like that at other people's places. He never wanted to sit down, always standing awkwardly and just holding his drink. If he had to put something down, he would ask 3 times if it was okay. You could tell he was stressed, just trying not to offend anyone. It kind of made things a bit uncomfortable at times.
I found it's having a total disconnect from others or understanding of a lot of basic things. Hearing friends talk about their childhoods now, I find it extremely odd. They did so much together as families. They got along with their siblings, went on many trips, got to do what they want, get what they want. It makes me nervous when talking to people because they ask about my childhood, and when I explain it, I see nothing wrong, but they get this look on their face like they're at a funeral or something. It's just harder making connections to people cause you second-guess yourself a lot and are constantly afraid of disappointing others.
That's a tough place to be in. It's interesting how different everyone's upbringing can be. Some find it easy to connect with others, while others feel out of place. Those looks from friends when you share your story can really make you doubt yourself. It's normal to feel nervous about how others react. Just remember, everyone's experiences shape them differently. It's okay to have your own story, even if it doesn't match theirs.
Perhaps immediate obedience in regards to authority figures. This excludes questioning and or outwardly defying authority from time to time. And feeling anxious when visiting a friend's home or the home of a stranger where you don't already know the rules and whatnot. I know for me personally, mostly as a child, I was amazed that so many of my friends were raised in households with looser rules than the one in which I was raised. For instance, many of my childhood friends walked around the house with their shoes on, which I could not believe, and when I would offer to help with the after-supper dishes as I was taught, the parents would smile and shake their heads and tell me that it wasn't necessary and that I could go play.
I get that. I grew up with pretty strict rules too. Visiting friends was always a bit tense. Their homes felt so free compared to mine. I was confused when I saw kids just lounging around in their shoes, while I had to take mine off immediately. Offering to help was always my instinct, but hearing their parents say it wasn't needed felt strange. It really showed how different everyone's upbringing can be.
Really not wanting to disappoint others. I get so nervous I'm doing something wrong all the time. Also, if your parents are immigrants, you tend to relate to other people with immigrant parents because they all want to have doctors, lawyers, and such as children. African parents, man. Mine weren't even the worst. They're great to be honest, especially compared to my friends.
I can relate to that feeling of pressure. My friend always felt the weight of expectations from their immigrant parents. They wanted them to succeed and be perfect all the time. It can mess with your head, right? But I think as we grow up, we realize that it's okay to just be ourselves. Not everyone's path is the same, and that's fine.
Currently in a strict household. I'm not allowed to do that. We'll get in trouble. I can't go because of my parents. You're allowed to do that? Sorry, I got grounded. That's too late. I have to be back for curfew, formerly from a strict household. Oh. I wasn't allowed to do that. I never tried that before, about something very common. I don't know that very famous actor, never heard of it. I never stayed up that late.
I remember being in a strict household as a kid. Everything was off limits. My friends would be out late, and I'd just sit there, missing out. I once wanted to see a movie, but my parents said no. I would hear stories about my friends sneaking out, while I couldn't even stay up past 8. Now, looking back, I get why I was so curious about the world outside. It's all part of growing up.
So, I know I had strict parents when my friends stopped inviting me places. I asked why one day, and they said, "Your parents never say yes, so we don't ask anymore." I'm reading all these comments and asking my husband if I do X, Y, and Z. He is saying yes to it all. It's a shock to realize how much my childhood has affected me as an adult. Just out of pure curiosity, those of you like me who are realizing this as you, are you the oldest child?
That makes sense. It's wild how those early experiences shape our decisions later. I was the oldest too, and I can relate. You kinda end up second-guessing yourself and just want approval. It's strange to see how those patterns follow us into adulthood. I guess understanding it is the first step to breaking it. We might not be as strict with ourselves now, but those habits are hard to shake off.
The inability to think for themselves, mostly pertaining to fear of inadequacy or not living up to the identity your parents want you to be. Profession, ideology, love, deeply profound answers to your life journey that should never be dictated. My father died when I was young, and I had the luxury of becoming my own man without having an older version of me tell who I'm meant to be.
That's a pretty personal reflection. Losing a parent can change your outlook. I can see how it would push someone to find their own path. Not having that outside pressure might let you explore who you really are. It sounds like you took that opportunity to figure things out for yourself, which is important for personal growth. Everyone should have the chance to define their own identity.
If they come over and there is candy available, they eat all of it. Same with soda or any other item they've been rationed or denied. I was raised with candy in dishes all around the house and soda in the fridge when I wanted it. Don't care much about either. Friends would come over whose parents restricted intake or outright denied it, and they would pillage our candy dishes.
That sounds pretty relatable. I had friends like that too. They'd come over and just go for everything. I grew up with snacks around, so it didn't really matter to me. But I'd watch my friends just grab everything in sight, like it was their last chance. It's funny how different experiences shape what we think is special or not.
I made an account just to answer this question. I feel like I can relate to many of these comments. I would say one giveaway is denying that they grew up with abnormal rules, almost having a sense that they need to validate the way they grew up. Sometimes with my friends, when talking about rules I've grown up with, when they mention how strange the rules are, I usually reply with things like, "Oh no, it's a good thing my parents did that, because," or, "Well, it's not all that bad." They just have my best interest in mind. I love my family, and in many ways I've been spoiled beyond belief. But some of the rules they made only applied to me, while my younger sibling got away with more. Whenever I'd mention it to them, they get upset and think of some lame excuse to support their reasoning. I believe that sometimes households are stricter depending on if you're the oldest/youngest child. Gender could have something to do with it too.
I can relate to that. Growing up, I noticed my friends had different rules, and I found myself defending my parents' choices too. It was like I needed to justify the strictness. My siblings seemed to have an easier time, which led to some resentment. I think being the oldest definitely shaped my perspective on those rules. It's strange how family dynamics play into how we see fairness or favoritism.
Very true. Although I do suffer from anxiety and shyness, I'm also pretty defiant. I have a tough time getting along with certain personality types if they're my superior. I try not to defy them to avoid tension, but sometimes it doesn't go too well. Being a great liar has its perks, I'll be honest, but it also leads to creativeness/hyper-awareness in other fields. For example, I'd sneak out sometimes, but before I'd leave, I would leave the back door latch unlocked or keep it locked, but close the door just enough so that it doesn't latch shut. My parents only looked to see if the door was locked. If it looked closed, they would go to bed satisfied. Or if I was up drawing too late, I'd listen for my dad's footsteps and turn off the light and sit still until I heard him snoring again. You get pretty good at being aware of your surroundings.
I get that. Dealing with anxiety and the need to be defiant can be tricky. Sneaking out or trying to stay under the radar shows a lot of creativity and thinking. It's interesting how you adapt to your environment, like listening for footsteps or finding ways to avoid conflict. That kind of awareness can be useful, even if it comes from a need to stay out of trouble. It's a different way to handle tough situations.
Yes, and it's always about unimportant stuff. I would come up with lies to justify purchasing food, how much something costs, or excuses for why I did something. I've gotten better, and I don't do it with my so, but everyone else, I start coming up with stories for situations that have yet to happen.
I get that. It's easy to overthink things and create these scenarios in your head. I had a friend who would do the same when it came to spending money. They'd make up reasons for buying snacks or going out. It got kinda funny how elaborate the stories were. Now they just keep it simple, and it's definitely less stressful. Sometimes, it's just easier to be honest.
This is me, and I know it's wrong, but I just can't seem to get out of it. I go through social situations all the time, completely terrified of how I act, and whether or not I am living up to the ideal person in the situation. It goes to the point that I literally feel trapped in this mindset and can't get out. Like this invisible electric fence around my head, stopping me from feeling relaxed and myself here. I hate it. I really hate it.
That's tough. Feeling trapped in your own mind can be exhausting. It's like you're putting on a mask for everyone else, and it gets old. Sometimes it helps to remind yourself that you're not alone in this. Many people struggle with the same feelings. Just take it a day at a time. Finding small ways to be authentic can make a difference, even if it feels hard at first.
When I first moved to university on the first day, I went to say hello to the girl next to me. She was moving her stuff in with her parents, and her parents were on complete control. They decided where everything in her room went, what was unpacked, and what was put in boxes under her bed. A few times during the year, she couldn't find something and phoned her parents, and they were able to tell her exactly where it was in her room despite not having been there in weeks. Understandably, she was unable to do anything by self. Even things like taking the bus and going to the supermarket were struggles for her, and she went on to develop mental health issues that her parents refused to acknowledge she might need help and support to get through, or even that mental health issues were a possibility.
That's a tough situation. It's interesting how some parents can be so controlling, even into college. It seems that girl didn't have the chance to find her independence. It's sad that her parents couldn't see the signs of her struggling. You really need support to navigate those changes, and it's a shame they weren't there for her in the right way. It shows how important it is to let young adults learn and grow.
I have real trouble at work because I have this inbuilt assumption that my ideas and decisions need to be agreed by someone who knows what they're doing. I can't ever just go, I think this is a good idea, and I'm going to do that thing. It all has to be run past someone else before I can move on it. Very frustrating.
Sounds like you're stuck in a cycle of overthinking. It's tough when you feel like you need validation for every choice. Sometimes, trusting yourself is the way to go. Maybe you could start small, making little decisions by yourself and see how that feels. It might help build your confidence.
I had that until I got through basic training. Now, when people try to pull the voice of authority on me, I get annoyed and out-authority them. It's all fun and games until I did that with this youngish mom I know, who tried talking to me like she does her toddler. I really didn't mean to trigger her dad issues. Sorry, Donna.
Sounds like you had a moment there. It's interesting how basic training changes your perspective. That voice of authority can come off strong, especially in casual settings. I guess it's tough when someone gets triggered by something you didn't mean to say. Happens to the best of us, though. Just gotta roll with it and keep the vibe chill. Donna will probably understand eventually.
Adding to that, anytime there's a knock on my door or I get a call from one of my parents. My brother and I had gotten them to calm down and back off a bit before I was even in high school, but still years later, I tense anytime I see Mom on the incoming call screen, expecting something about what I'm getting in trouble for now.
I can relate to that. I remember my brother and I had to deal with our parents' stress too. It got to a point where we had these codes for when they were about to lose it. Just a simple glance, and we'd know to brace ourselves. Even now, every time my phone buzzes and it's a family member, I still get that little jolt of anxiety. It's hard to shake off those old habits.
Around my boyfriend's family, I still ask to get anything to eat or drink. Every time, his various family members say, "You don't have to ask," or "Why are you asking?" I usually wait until he does something and just follow his lead, though we've been together for 2 years and visit his family frequently. I have just recently stopped asking if it's okay if I use their bathroom while I'm there.
It's kind of funny how that works with families. You end up feeling like you need permission for the simplest things. It took a while, but it sounds like you're finding your place. Following your boyfriend's lead makes sense. You get comfy over time, and it's good to know when to just go with the flow. Stopping the bathroom question is a small step but also shows you're settling in.
Except for the chaperone thing, this is me. I'm a complete doormat at work and school because I got so used to just having to follow orders, and I say sorry for things that don't even need to be apologized for. I'm also always the first person to go home, which in high school was because my parents didn't like me going out, so if I did, I had to be home within a few hours. But now it's because I got so used to having to stay in that I've become a total homebody.
I get that. It's easy to fall into the habit of just going along with what others say. I used to feel the same way, always saying sorry and just being the quiet one. It takes some time to break out of it, but it's good to recognize those patterns. Being a homebody can be comforting, but finding a balance is key. It's alright to step out sometimes, even just for a bit.
I had a similar thing. I take classical singing lessons. My teacher and I were struggling to get me to use all the voice I can muster, not just keeping it to a moderate, polite level. At one point, he said to me, "I know that when you were a little girl, you were taught to be quiet, to not make a fuss, to not take up space. You need to unlearn that now."
That's interesting. I guess a lot of us are conditioned to be reserved growing up. It's tough to break out of that. Using your voice fully can be a big step, whether it's in singing or just expressing yourself. It's good that you have a teacher who understands that and helps you challenge those old habits. Getting comfortable taking up space is really important.
I grew up in a household where yelling and screaming was the only way my parents communicated with us. Now, as an adult, being negative and raising my voice is how I primarily speak, and it's absolutely debilitating. It's hard for me to speak softly or nicely because it doesn't feel natural. I know it makes people be put off by me, and it affects so many areas in my life: work, relationships, self-esteem. I've just never had a stable household where anyone was nice to me just for the reason to be nice. It's a real problem I have no idea how to deal with.
It sounds tough growing up in a loud environment. It makes sense that communication patterns stick with you. It can be hard to break out of that cycle, especially when it feels like your default. Maybe finding a way to practice softer communication, like through friends or in low-pressure situations, could help. It's not easy, but recognizing it is a good first step. You're not alone in this.
My wife gets weirded out when I ask her to speak softer or I don't yell loud enough for her to hear in the shower. She finds it strange how my siblings and I are all so quiet all the time. Our parents were the only ones allowed to yell, usually at us or at each other, and any loud noises were not allowed to come from us kids. On the plus side, I was always known as the quiet and most considerate neighbor.
It's kind of interesting how those childhood rules stick with you. Growing up in a house where yelling wasn't an option can shape how you communicate later on. It's funny to see how your wife reacts to it. I guess being the quiet one can have its perks, like being the considerate neighbor. But it can also create some funny moments when you just can't seem to project your voice.
I had this a while ago. I, 27M, was on a hunting trip with two older buddies in their 50s. One just talked about how he was proud of his son for joining a sports club, and it reminded me that my parents never told me they were proud of anything I did and constantly played down every achievement with a casual. Well, you are gifted, so it is easy for you. I had to pull my hat down so they couldn't see me cry, silently walking behind them.
That's a tough moment to have. It's hard when you feel like you never get that validation. It's easy to compare yourself to others, especially when their experiences are so different. Sometimes, you just have to carry those feelings quietly. It can help to remember that your worth isn't tied to someone else's recognition. It's okay to feel those emotions, even if we keep them to ourselves.
In my town, rural Ohio, when we were in high school, the local police would pull us over for no reason other than curfew checks. If they saw someone out driving at 11 p.m. who looked young, they were getting stopped. Also, they were super strict about the rules regarding how many passengers you can have at 16/17. The police were bonus strict parents.
Sounds about right. In my town, the cops were kinda like the fun police too. Regular stops just to check if we were out past curfew. They treated us like we were breaking major laws just for being kids. And yeah, the passenger rule was a joke. It made late-night drives way too tense. Just felt like they had nothing better to do than hover over us.
I had the usual no Simpsons or South Park thing too. My favorite, however, is telling people that I also wasn't allowed to watch Starbright, Rugrats, Doug, etc. My mom got this stupid Christian magazine that had a reviewer who would write about what cartoons or movies were safe for kids to watch. I asked my mom about those shows when I was older. Oh, I still watch them, just with the remote nearby. And she told me it was because of the bad characters in the show. The writers said they could be a bad influence on kids. My mom was a silly, paranoid parent. Amazing mom, but took everything as Satan's gonna spoil my child. Years later, talking to her, I said, "You do realize those characters were always shown in a bad light, would get what was coming to them or lose to the good guy, right?" Her response, "Well, yeah, now I get that." At least she learned.
It's interesting how our childhood experiences shape what we think is okay. I remember not being allowed to watch certain shows too. My friends' parents had similar beliefs. They thought even the smallest bad characters could have a negative impact. Looking back, it feels funny. I mean, we all know those characters usually end up losing anyway. It's cool your mom figured it out later. Gives you a different perspective on growing up.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.